Good afternoon. Okay. Our speaker for today is a graduate of the University of the Philippines, Manila, College of Dentistry in 1992. She did her externship program in oral surgery at the UP Philippine General Hospital in 1994. She was a faculty of the UP College of Dentistry from 1997 to 2005, where she taught oral anatomy and restorative dentistry. She was also a clinical instructor at the operative dentistry, where she served as section head in 2004. It was also the year where she finished her master's degree in health professions education at NTTC-HP, UP Manila. In 2013, she became the faculty here at NTTC-HP, and the courses she was handled at the college include the Psycho-Philosophical Foundation of Teaching and Learning, Mentoring, and Instructional Design. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Dr. Maria Lourdes Dorothy S. Salvacion.
So I am very nervous. Pero nung nakita ko si Claire, mas nervous si Claire. Introducing. Okay. So I was given 2 tips, no, for people who are nervous before speaking. The first is a do. No? So something that you can do before starting your talk, no, is take your time, take 5 breaths, and look around. Find familiar faces and smile at them. Okay, and they smile back at you, so you're relaxed. No? So, and then the second is a don't. No? I was told, don't start your talk with an apology. So don't say, sorry, I'm late, sorry, we started late, or anything like that. So don't start with an apology. So I will not start with an apology. But I will start by informing you that I changed the title of the talk. Okay. So please lock the doors, walang lalabas. Okay. So what is my issue with this? No? The first is, I didn't like the word best. Best teaching strategies. Why? Because best is a comparative word. Good, better, best. So you say best, that means these are the teaching strategies. If you want to go OBE, you better learn these ones. So I had my qualms about that because there are too many things that go into how do you select your teaching strategies. So this is not the lecture itself, so don't get so, no, but just to show you, no, these are the things that you consider in choosing your teaching strategy. Nature of the subject matter, course objectives, okay, that one we can be all the same. No? So in that sense, our objectives might be the same. Even across universities, even across countries, we can have the same objectives if we're teaching the same subjects, right? But all the other considerations, resources, iba-iba tayo ng resources, iba-iba tayo ng institutional resources. Nature of learners, definitely, iba-iba tayo ng learners. And then finally, the teacher factor. Meron kayong gamay na teaching strategies. And we do not want to be prescriptive. I don't want to tell you, learn these ones. Because it depends a lot on what you are comfortable with. So yun yung issue ko doon. So that is the context. We always teach in context. And there are too many, no? The teachers, the learners, and the resources. Those are all the contextual factors that you have to consider in choosing your strategy. No? So in that, there are too many things. No? So I cannot tell you these are the best. What is best for your institution, for you, might not be the best for somebody else in another institution. Okay? So yan ang una kong issue with the title. The second is the word teaching. We're talking about OBE, outcomes-based education. Teaching is talking about input, Diba? Teaching strategy talks about the input. What is the outcome that we want? Kung teaching ang input, ano yung outcome? Learning. Very good. Okay, learning. So that's why I changed the title to Teaching Learning Strategies for OBE. So nawala na yung word best at nadagdagan ng learning. Okay, so Teaching Learning Strategies for OBE. Pati yung word na for dyan, significant. No? Kasi lahat ng sasabihin ko sa inyo today, come in force. Okay? So to facilitate our remembering. No? So what's ahead for us? So we will review first the principles of OBE. There are 4. Okay? The features. No? So any, if you want to go OBE, you have to all know the principles of OBE. If you follow the principles, chances are your classroom will be an active classroom. So we will discuss the features of an active classroom. There are 4. And then finally, paano kung nakita nyong hindi fit yung inyong classroom? It doesn't have the features. I will give you 4 tips to how to examine and convert your classrooms or your teaching strategies to make it appropriate or OBE. So with that, my learning objectives for the day would be, yun na nga, it's not just for you to know these teaching strategies, but you have to be able to explain why some strategies work and some don't. Okay, you have to be able to describe the features of an OBE fit strategy. And finally, most important, I think, is you have to be able to OBEify your teaching learning strategies. So what can you do to OBEify so your strategies? And then, only then, will we go to concrete examples. So I will talk about some teaching strategies, but after we've discussed all of those, so that it will again be in context. Okay? So kung handa na tayo, we will start with a review. 4 principles of OBE, and we will study them in the context of ano yung consequences nila sa teaching strategies. Okay. Yung 5 naka-attend na from the beginning, naalala nyo ba to? All of a sudden, they will disappear. Okay, so there are 4. No? Dapat memorize nyo to. No? Clarity of focus, high expectations, expanded opportunities, and design down. Kung memorize nyo to, mapapansin nyong pinalitan ko yung posisyon ng dalawa. Number 2 and number 3. No? I switched the 2. Usually, clarity and then expanded opportunities and then high expectations. Why did I switch the 2? Wala lang, to facilitate our remembering. No? Kasi it spells the word CHED. So ngayon, alam nyo kung bakit pinagdidiinan ng CHED, ang OBE. OBE, OBE. No? Kasi magkapangalan sila. No? So CHED. No? So if you forget what are the principles of OBE, alalahanin nyo, CHED. No? Clarity of focus, high expectations, expanded opportunities, and design down. Clarity of focus has to do with identifying your outcomes. So clarity of focus on outcomes of significance. So you have to be able to, teka lang ha, Mandy, excuse me. Technical. Okay, so like all learners, kailangan ko ng kodigo. Okay, so clarity of focus. No? So clarity of focus on outcomes of significance. So before you can talk of your teaching strategies, it's assumed that you have already defined your outcomes, be it program outcomes, course outcomes. So if you don't have it yet, then as Doc Nemel would say, no? Okay lang whatever route you take. Whatever strategies you take kasi wala ka naman goal. So kahit anong daan ang kunin mo. So the first thing you have to do is choose your goal. Okay, sorry. Okay, high expectations has to deal with, OBE is a very motivational framework, no? Or approach. So it builds on what they can do, no? Into what, giving them more things that they can do. So it's very competency, no? Focused, no? And that's why it, it builds on high expectations, no? For its learners, no? Quality performance, no? So that's what you're after. Expanded opportunities because we recognize that learners are different. They have different learner styles. They have different pace, no, in their studies, and therefore you have to give them different opportunities. So kung merong gustong mag-self-study, no, kung merong gustong mag-community, no, they learn best, no, during community work, you have to look into all those different opportunities and try to incorporate them among your teaching strategies. And design down simply means that one of beginning with the end in mind. So start with what are your exit outcomes and design backwards. What are the intermediating outcomes? And design your teaching strategies according to those, no? So you lead them towards your exit outcomes. Okay. So this is the simplest definition of outcomes that I found. It's only, sorry, Mandy. Is there a way of yung size nung okay, culminating demonstration of learning. Tatlong words lang yan. Ang hindi ko lang explain dyan is yung off. Okay? First word is demonstration. So, outcomes talk about, demonstration comes from the Latin monstrare, is to show. So, demonstration means they have to be able to show. So, outcomes does not end at knowledge. So, if you're familiar with Miller's pyramid, knows how, shows, does. So yung demonstration is at the highest level. It's at the doing level. So students have to be able to do something with the knowledge that you're giving them. So your teaching strategies have to be directed at the doing level. So yung information transfer is just the first part. Your teaching strategies cannot stop at information transfer. It has to go to application of that information into something usable, no? Tangible, visible, observable. So, yon, demonstration verbs became the center of the instructional process. Okay. The word culminating, hindi ko na alam yung Latin dyan, no? Pero culminating means at the end. So, meaning, we are interested in the exit outcomes. What students would be able to demonstrate successfully when they exit the system. No? But aside from that, kaya nga nag-design down tayo, how do we lead them to those exit outcomes? The problem is sometimes we test them at the end. No? We test for the exit outcomes, but we didn't teach what they needed to know or what they needed to be able to do in order to lead them to the exit outcomes. So what we analyze also is the enabling outcomes. So these are the intermediate outcomes necessary to eventually achieve the exit outcome. So your teaching strategies have to also direct itself to these enabling outcomes. Okay. And then finally, the word learning. So as we said already previously, we have elevated the meaning of the word learning. So it's not just knowing and understanding, but it has to be applying that knowledge into various ways. So learning at the highest level. Kasi nga, you have to be able to do something with that learning. So the learner, the goal is not just that the learners be knowledgeable, but they have to be competent. That's why before outcomes-based came competency-based education. So competence. So, and then we said, if we're talking about competence, okay, so we're talking about application of knowledge, and we're talking about the real world. So, when you talk about competence, you're preparing them for competence. This already tells you that OBE is directed towards the real world. So you have to analyze what are the competencies needed in the real world and then prepare them for that in your classrooms. So teachers in the classrooms, you always have to be in touch with the industry, with the competencies required. So as the society changes, as information technology changes, the competencies are changing, and they're changing fast. So the classroom also has to be adaptable. You always have to be changing according to the competencies required in the real world. Okay. So this is study made in the Chinese University of Hong Kong. So they had a study, best practices, so they don't have qualms about the title. Best practices of OBE. So this university, they've been into OBE for a long time, and they are actively evaluating themselves. So they have periodic evaluations of their teaching strategies, of their disciplines. So what they did here was that they chose the 6 top performing disciplines or colleges in their universities. And they interviewed the students from those top performing disciplines. And likewise, they interviewed the award-winning professors. And their question is simply, what do you think are the capabilities that your graduates should possess? Simple lang. So what generic capabilities or outcomes should your graduates possess? And they came up with these 6, the smaller boxes. Self-managed learning, critical thinking, problem solving, adaptability. So these are lumped into intellectual competencies. And then you have 2 capabilities, communication skills and interpersonal skills and group work. So these are working together competencies. So across disciplines, colleges, these are what they came up with. And if all of us, I think most of the professions now have finished with their, yung mga CHED memorandum orders regulating and implementing your professions. So you have your program outcomes already listed. So you will see that if you get your list, most of those program outcomes will fall under these headings. So these are the generic capabilities. So these are the competencies. These are the competencies that we are trying to form in our students. Okay, so we're done with the review. Now we will go to the features of an active classroom. So if you follow the principles or the philosophy of OBE, chances are your classroom should have these features. So as I said, they come in 4 again, para madaling alalahanin. 4 na T's: thinking, task focus, teamwork, and transcendence. So 4 T's. Thinking, task focus, teamwork, and transcendence. Thinking, what does that mean? So thinking, you would like your classrooms, your students, to be active thinkers. And we already said earlier that by thinking, we don't mean knowledgeable. We mean they can apply. So they should be able to question, apply, explore, deal with real life problems, and solve them. So that's the level of thinking that we want. So it's not thinking as in, do you understand, class? Yes. No? So understanding level of thinking lang yon. No? But we want our classrooms, the students in our classrooms, to be thinking enough to challenge the teacher, no? And to apply what they're learning, no? To their real life problems. No? So yeah, as teachers, I'm sure, I don't know if you're intimidated when the students ask questions. No? Ako, kinikilig ako. No? Because that means nag-iisip sila. No? While you were lecturing, nag-iisip sila. So, mas nakakakilig pa kung hindi mo masagot yung tanong nila. So, di ba? Kasi ibig sabihin, they really got what you were talking about and what yung tanong nila is not in your lecture. So, don't get insulted, no? Kasi ibig sabihin nga, it's beyond your lecture. So, tama lang na hindi mo alam, no? So, hindi naman tama, pero okay lang. So, pati ikaw mag-aaral, no? Okay. So, this is a cartoon that I like very much, no? I expect you all to be independent, innovative, critical thinkers who will do exactly as I say. So, yun. So, ito yung example of a teacher na nakasulat, ito yung outcomes na gusto niya, critical thinking, no, innovation, no, innovative, independent thinkers, pero teaching strategy niya doesn't follow. No? Okay? So chances are siya lang ang nagle-lecture dyan sa harap and they cannot challenge what he's saying, etc. No? So, yun. So, opposite. What we want is that they actually come up with burning questions that they want to answer. No? So, thinking classroom, no, is one where questions are asked, ideas are challenged, and information is freely shared. Okay. Task focus. Okay. Task focus, yon. No? So, logical from what we've been talking before. No? So, the knowledge that you give them, you have to give them application activities where they can use that knowledge to usually solve, no? To think about, analyze, maybe solve, no? Evaluate, no? Something. No? So in other words, you make them do something. Okay, so yun yung task focus. And preferably, these are tasks that they will actually do in real life. Teamwork. Why? Because this is the reality. I don't know if there is any, if you want to think, you can think about it now. Is there any profession where you are completely alone? Parang in this day and age, wala yata, no? You always work with people somehow, no? So, working with teams, working with peers in teams, both inside and outside the classroom. So, your teaching strategy somehow also has to include this feature. Do you have activities wherein they have to relate, well, to each other? Kaya yung mga away-away, okay lang yan. Because they're learning the reality of working in teams. Okay, so, and then, so they have to become you're preparing them to become active members of the wider learning community of the real world. So more and more people skills is being valued in the workplace, no? Beyond intelligence. So, so kung intelligent ka lang, sige, doon ka sa laboratory, mag-research ka, no? Pero yung no, sometimes they can't work in teams, then it's important also to train them in this. Finally, this one, transcendence. Transcendence means beyond the classroom. So what does this mean? So you transcend the classroom. You ideally help them to connect, interact with other people in different kinds of out-of-class activities. So yung mga community work, making them attend forums, conferences, wherein they will learn, aside from learning, they will interact with people of the same field, community-based experiences, partnership with professional and international exchanges, mga OJTs, exposure, no? Exposure trips. Okay, so the purpose of this is for them to get a broader context of their learning. So that's why it's motivational, because they will see the future. They will see where they will apply the knowledge. And they might even end up better students because they're motivated. They will know what they need the knowledge for. So that's a common comment of students, di ba? Hindi ko alam kung para saan ba to. Para saan ba kami nagme-memorize nito? So when you expose them to the real world, then they see, ay hindi ko talaga kailangan pala yun. Hopefully, they will see na kailangan pala. No? Dito pala gagamitin yon. No? Okay? At kung the conclusion is hindi pala talaga nila kailangan, well then maybe it's outdated nga yung curriculum mo. So it's good to get that feedback from them so that you can revise the curriculum. So they even become sources of information for you. Na it's time to revise. Okay? Okay, so the 21st century education, so we said thinking, ano? Malagi tayong may quiz dito. Thinking, what's the second T? Task focused, teamwork, transcendental, no? Transcendent, hindi transcendental, iba yon. Okay? If you want, kung hindi nyo kayang 4, pwedeng 3 lang. Active, collaborative, so that takes the place of the teamwork, and experiential. So ACE. So kung hindi mo maalala yung 4 na T, alalahanin nyo lang si ACE. Active, collaborative, and experiential. Okay. Okay, malapit na tayo matapos. Malayo pa. Okay, this one is the core. No? Kasi ito yung gusto kong take home nyo talaga. How do I convert my teaching strategies? So you don't have to throw your teaching strategies na gamay mo na. You don't have to throw it out. You just have to examine and convert them to make them OBE. So outcomes-based. So we will examine and convert. No? So when is a teaching strategy fit for OBE? Ilan kaya ito? Very good. Very good. Sabi ko, di ba, lahat 4. No? 4. So we are 4 examination on and conversion points. Constructive alignment, student performance, reflection, feedback. Wala akong acronym dyan. No? Kung gusto mo, CSR. No? Kasi reflection and feedback always go together. No? So kung gusto mong gawing 3 lang, CSR. No? Constructive alignment, student performance, reflection, and feedback. Okay. Constructive alignment. What does this mean? Connected yan sa clarity of focus. This means constructively aligned towards outcomes. Okay. So talagang kung hindi pa defined ang outcomes nyo, wala talaga kayong papatunguhan. No? Go back to your institutions. Let's define our outcomes first. Because you cannot choose your teaching strategies. You cannot design your teaching strategies kung hindi pa clear ang outcomes. So the first is, have your outcomes ready and then you can check. Constructively aligned ba tayo sa towards our outcomes? What can you do? So very practical to. No? Number 1, have a list of your learning outcomes. Have a list of your learning outcomes and a list of your activities. So kung may instructional design na kayo, yon. So that's what you will bring. Bring your instructional designs. No? Usually, may grid yan, di ba? I mean, it's in a table wherein you have your learning outcomes on the leftmost, followed by the content, followed by the teaching strategies, no? You can even divide that to the teacher activities and learner activities. And then finally, assessment strategies. All of those elements have to be aligned with the outcome. So kung ito yung outcome mo, appropriate ba yung content? Kung ito yung outcome mo, appropriate ba yung teaching strategy? Appropriate towards either the exit outcomes or appropriate towards the enabling outcomes. Hindi naman kailangan lahat up towards the exit outcomes. Kasi hindi naman posible yon. But it has to be aligned towards it. Meaning it's hitting an enabling outcome. You are preparing them to eventually reach the exit outcomes. So have a list of your learning outcomes and a list of your activities. Map out these activities against the learning outcomes and ask yourself the question, cross-check if all your learning outcomes are covered in the activities. Common learning outcomes. By the end of this course, the student should be able to manage a patient with hypertension. Jump sa teaching strategy. So those of you who are taking instructional design, this is how we check your submissions. So we check and we say, learning outcome, jump, teaching strategy. Then we see, is it aligned? That's the first thing you do. We check if it's aligned. So management, by the end, the student should be able to manage a patient with hypertension. Teaching strategy, lecture, video, ano pa pwede? Role play, or actually pwede okay yung role play ha. Pero kung panay lectures lang and video and reading, may reading assignments ka, etc. So can you say that you are preparing them for managing a patient with hypertension? Maybe you're giving them the knowledge base. You're giving them the required knowledge. So you are targeting an enabling outcome because you have to have the knowledge base. But if nasa end na ng semester, wala ka pang teaching strategy wherein they actually interviewed, or even if you give them theoretical cases, they made a role play wherein you saw them interviewing, making decisions, making a differential diagnosis and making a diagnosis, and then having a treatment plan. That's managing a patient with So you have to have teaching strategies that are directed towards that. So yun yung titingnan mo, yun yung construct alignment. Kung ito yung outcome, learning outcome, all the teaching strategies that you have until the end of the semesters, natuhog mo ba yung learning outcome na yun? The verb that is contained in your learning outcome. Kasi kung hanggang lectures ka lang, change your learning outcome. By the end of the course, the student should be able to explain. Or should be able to, but it's not to be able to manage. Kasi hindi mo siya ma-achieve kung talagang nag-lecture ka lang ng nag-lecture. So yun. So either change the outcome or add teaching strategies. Check also that all your activities are targeting a learning outcome. So you will see that sometimes we have extraneous activities. So, kasi narinig natin, ito yung problema when we just get best teaching strategies are like this. Sabi kasi active. So sige, I have to have an active, tas sinabi din transcendence. So dapat lumalabas. So sige, this one I hear it a lot from other schools. Go to Enchanted Kingdom. It's a required excursion. It's a required field trip for physics. Valid? Yes. Kasi physics, madami kang mapag-uusapan afterwards. Because their subject is physics. So you will talk about centripetal force, centrifugal force, velocity, angle. So marami kang assignment na mabibigay after nila umuwi from Enchanted Kingdom. Kung ang subject mo is physiology, valid, pinapunta mo ng Enchanted Kingdom, pwede din. Tumaas yung kanyang heart rate. Nawala ng pakiramdam yung kanyang nail ng mga fingertips nung umaakyat na yung roller coaster, Nangyari yan sa akin, not sa akin, yung kasama ko, Nung umaakyat na yung roller coaster, sabi niya, hindi ko nararamdaman yung aking kamay. No? So hindi ko alam kung anong gagawin ko, hindi naman pwede mag-stop, di ba? So anyway, so visual, valid. Pwede mong pag-usapan yon afterwards. Anong nangyari sa'yo, no? Nung akala mo mamamatay ka na. So, ganun. Okay? So, but, okay, anatomy. No? Valid activity kaya yon for anatomy? Well, kung yung mga body parts, ano kayang body part to? Ganun. Okay. Okay, so, depende. So, my point is, you have all your activities have to also have a reason. Bakit siya andyan? So, hindi lang porket active. Hindi lang porket collaborative. A lot of people, ano daw kasi active. So, let's start with exercise. Active, di ba? Common sa mga workshops. Palagi kayong pinag-exercise, no? Okay lang yon as icebreaker. No? But it doesn't fall under your learning activities. It's not a learning activity. No? So, ginising mo lang yung inyong audience. No? So, ganun. So, check that all your activities are targeting a learning outcome. Otherwise, it can go. So, since time is scarce, kailangan mo mag-isip what has to go. You can choose this way. No? To go back to number 3, cross-check if all your learning outcomes are covered in the activities. Personal advocacy ko to, no? Yung attitudinal outcomes. Because we are going outcomes-based, medyo na puwersa tayo, no? To come up with, you're familiar already with KSA, no? Knowledge, skills, attitudes. No? So your institutions might have forced you. No? Dapat meron kang knowledge outcomes, skills outcomes, and attitudinal outcomes. Sige na nga. Okay, so attitudinal outcomes, the students should show respect for colleagues, co-workers, and patients. Sige, show respect. It's there in your outcomes. Paano mo tinuro yon? Ano yung teaching activity mo that covered respect? Pwedeng meron ka kasing lecture on yung bioethics. No? So, but respect, can it be taught by a lecture? No? So, yun. So, again, that one, you have it in your list of outcomes. So, you have to find your teaching strategy that was directed to that outcomes. No? That outcome. So, you might have to do a video forum wherein there's an issue and then you can discuss it with them. No? You can have role play, and so all of these discussion activities, no? Wherein you talk about that value that you've identified na gusto mo siyang part of your outcomes. No? So yun lang yun. No? So attitudinal outcomes yun. Give it a check. Kasi yun yung commonly underserved outcomes. No? At the most, pahirapan nang ang nalagay natin siya sa list of outcomes natin, pero how are we teaching it and how are you assessing it? Okay, and then check the appropriateness of the activity to the desired learning outcomes. We already talked about this. No? So, kung yung appropriate ba yung activity dun sa outcome. No? Kung manage ang iyong outcome, you have to give them activities wherein you made them manage. So, hindi lang you made them describe. No? Okay, so focus on outcomes. So, you have to have clear what are your objectives and competencies. Okay. Student performance. Okay. Increase student performance. Kasi nga gusto natin ng active. Active, collaborative, experiential. So, active. So how do we go about examining this? List down the teacher and student activities that usually take place during your chosen teaching strategy. Again, this should come out in your instructional design. Examine the nature of these activities and modify the design to include learner generative events, which actively involve the learner and target the shows how level of clinical competence. So we will discuss what are learner generative events. Okay, so focus on learner generative activities. Okay, this one is very practical. I don't know if you follow this. No? These are 9 events, no? Instructional events. It's very practical, it's very useful, no? All the way from 1981. No? These are the 9 events that a teacher would like to take place in his classroom. No? Gaining attention. The orange corresponds to what you do when you are like introduction phase of your lecture. No? So you want to gain their attention and you want to inform them of the objective. Why? Because this is going to give them motivation, relevance. And then the reddish or maroonish, there are 5 steps here, no? 5 events, correspond to the body, no? Of the lecture or of the classroom event. No? Simulate prior knowledge, present the information, provide guidance, elicit performance, and provide feedback. So that's the bulk of your teaching activity. And then the last part, which usually marks the closure, is assessing performance and enhancing retention and transfer. So you repeat, you give a summary, so ganon. So that's to enhance retention and transfer. So this, we've been following this, but my question is, are these teacher activities or learner activities? These are teacher activities. Okay? So sabi natin number 2 is learner activities. Try to increase learner activities. So, okay. So just if you read it kasi, no, ang ibig sabihin lang nito, substantive, teacher supplies. Yun ang ibig sabihin ng substantive. No? Teacher supplies. No? The students, the learner, generates. So ito yung learner generative activities. We would want to have learner generative activities in the classroom. So it doesn't mean na mawawala yung teacher supplantive activities, but you have to examine that it goes to learner generative activities. Why? Because it is the learner generative activities that eventually lead to outcomes. To learning. Kasi nga yung teacher, teaching lang yon. These are teaching activities. Okay. So, for example, the very same list that we had earlier, yung substantive events or the instruction, the teacher activities, thus we made the corresponding, what is the generative activities corresponding to those events? So kung the teacher tries to gain attention to the lesson, the learner activates attention to the learner, to the lesson. No? Okay, they establish the purpose. Arouse their interest and motivation, no? Because they find the relevance. They preview the lesson. So these are the things you want to happen. So hindi mo magagawa ito kasi it's the learner nga that has to do it. No? But this, at least your focus is it happening? No? So don't stop at ginagawa ko ba yung kailangan kong gawin? Kasi ginagawa mo pero hindi na pala nakakasunod yung learners mo. Then stop. Where are they now? Go to where they are. So they have to follow. So while you're teaching, while you're focusing on the instructor activities, you're watching. No? You have to be able to assess, are they doing the generative activities? And change your strategy, change your pace, etc. accordingly. So the generative activities is what you have to watch out for. Before you proceed to the next, nagawa na ba nila yon? Okay, so the body, okay, so again, it just says the same thing but from the learner's point of view. So, present information and example. Present ka lang ng percent, pero hindi mo naman tinitingnan kung na-process nila. No? So, this also gives you like a framework on your questioning. No? Kasi nga, ito yung kailangan yung tinatanong. No? Okay? So, we will not go there because I see that you are taking the pictures. Okay, so, but simply that one, no, that they correspond. Closure. No? This one, closure. The teacher summarizes and reviews. Better if the students summarize and review. Right? Because that means that they are the ones. Then you can ask them, no? You can ask them questions in order to remotivate and close. Anong natutunan nyo today? What's the significance of what you learned today? No? How are you going to apply it? No? So, again, no? So, okay. Assessment. So this is just a preview for next month. No? Next month we will tackle assessments. No? So again, very much OBE, no, is teaching or having activities that are directed towards students or learners assessing themselves. Okay. So the third, so we said, ano nga ba yung number 1? Construct alignment. Number 2, student performance. Number 3, reflection. Number 4 is feedback. So number 3, reflection. Facilitation of reflection begins with recognizing opportunities for reflection. Okay. Reflection is not automatic. You need to guide your learners to reflect. Whether it is a lecture, what's the significance of what we talked about today? So you know, especially in this day and age, when they leave the classroom, they really leave the classroom mentally also, no? Not just physically, but they leave everything that happened in the classroom. No? The next time they will think about that is the next time they enter your classroom. So unless you give them something to think about, they will not think about what happened inside the classroom. So facilitate the learning by giving them reflection points. So reflection papers, assignments that make them think. No? Or even just say, think about this. Next week, we will start with that one. No? We will talk about this. No? What is the significance? No? Where can you apply these things that we learned? No? So sometimes uso din kasi yung reflection paper, no? So pero we don't have an idea ano bang papag-reflect ko sa kanila, no? Did you like the lecture? Hindi naman tama. Hindi naman pwedeng, no, which is serious, nakakatawa, pero at the same time, sometimes when I read reflection papers of students, it's all along those lines. I liked the ganon, no? It's all feelings, it's all ganon, no? So you have to give guidance. What do you want them to reflect on? No? So, reflect on the context, the larger, no? Include considerations of the larger context, the meaning, the implications of the experience or the action. No? So, yun yung mga pwede nyong itanong sa reflection papers. Facilitate reflection. No? Why? Okay, so this is a model of learning from experience. Reflecting, no, is part of experiential learning. No? Reflection does not come automatic. No? Just because nagkaroon sila ng experience doesn't mean that they will reflect on it or that they will learn from that experience. No? So experiences, be it behavior, no? Experiences, when you've undergone an experience, first time niyang mag-assist sa childbirth. That's a very powerful experience. You have to facilitate the reflection after that. What did that experience mean to you? What are the, so it's not just the experience, but the behavior, the ideas, the feelings that went in that experience. So those are the things that you make them reflect on. You make them return to the experience, attend to the feelings, reevaluate the experience. Association, integration, validation, appropriation. So those are the things that you can ask them to do when you make them do reflection papers, so that they come up with new perspectives. Change in behavior, readiness for application. Isn't it true that And if we do this, there is no experience that they cannot learn from, even bad experiences. So I don't know if it happens to you, but I have classmates who do not want to go back to our school because of bad experiences. So these are experiences that, yeah, you could have processed with them so that good or bad, there is learning. But bad experiences not processed, they end up with phobia. They end up with, I do not want this field. I will not go into this field, etc. No? So, instead of, pwedeng mali, no? Commitment to action, so advocacy. They become passionate about an issue, no? Because they reflected on it. No? So yun. So do not assume that just because they went through an experience, they learn from it. No? You have to facilitate reflection. Okay. And feedback. No? So OBE-ifying your teaching strategies, feedback is a gift, a very important gift. It's an opportunity to see our blind spots, and it's a tool for future change. We have to give feedback generously. And in a way, again, same as reflection, we have to plan for it. You have to plan for feedback. Feedback is not always spontaneous. It should not be spontaneous. Yung mga spontaneous na feedback, usually yun yung feedback na galit. Diba? Spontaneous feedback. No? Or kung sobrang nakakamangha yung ginawa niya, then you will have a spontaneous feedback of, galing-galing mo, no? Ganon. But otherwise, we don't usually give feedback. No? But feedback has to be also planned out because students learn from feedback. Okay? Feedback is a teaching learning strategy. That's another thing. We tend to think of feedback as an assessment strategy. Feedback is a teaching learning strategy. There is a lot of learning. So if you're going to give feedback lang at the end of the semester, this is your grade. No? So usually the feedback that the students get is the grade. They don't understand where did the grade come from. This is the most tragic thing, no? When a student comes after the pagbigay ng course cards, no? And they fail the subject, and they had no idea that they were going to fail. That is the worst thing, no? Kasi it means that there was no feedback. They did not self-evaluate. They did not even get any idea that they were not doing well. All of a sudden, they failed. So that's the worst. So feedback is given throughout. It's given consistently. No? And yun na nga, that culture of feedback starts with self-critique. So this is connected to reflection. You have to plan for the reflection. Part of that is plan for self-assessment. Teach them to critique themselves. Feedback on themselves. Connected to this is peer critique. This is also a teaching strategy. No? You make them evaluate each other. No? This is part of, again, also the real world. No? Medyo may away-away dito minsan, no? But then, it's part of growing up also. And then, teach them. You have to give feedback on how they give feedback. Huh? Because giving feedback, in a way, is also a life skill. So teach your students how to give feedback. Constructive, positive, no, respectful. Okay. And then this one, resubmissions. So this one, we have a culture of this in NTTC. So hindi isang submitan lang. When you submit a paper, we give it back to you with feedback and you're expected to resubmit. And then, buti kung dalawa lang, minsan merong 5th submission. Okay? So, why? Because each time nagbalik-balik from the teacher to the student, that's a learning opportunity. No? Kasi each time, hindi naman babalik lang sa'yo with a grade or with a, repeat, with the direction, repeat, revise. No, it's napakatad-tad ng red. No, we try not to use red. No, kasi it's emotionally, No, but may mga feedback. No? So, yon. So, it's a learning opportunity. So, give feedback generously. Okay, qualities of effective feedback. Okay, madaling alalahanin. STAR. Okay? Specific, timely, actionable, and respectful. So specific. Focus on the essentials. You don't have to exhaust. You don't have to say everything. Minsan, if there is a salient thing that you need to respond to, no, doon ka muna mag-focus. Kasi kung ma-overwhelm yung student, baka hindi din constructive. No? So focus on the essentials. What change would make the most significant improvement? No? Focus on that. No? Okay. Timely means immediate, no? And frequent. Immediate and frequent feedback. Actionable, nasa timely pa lang tayo. Provide opportunities to integrate the feedback to produce a better product. That's why it's not at the end only. It's throughout. Otherwise, they end up with the same product. Actionable means they can do something about it. No? And that's why we feedback on behavior, not the person. No? So you don't say, I noticed that you did this, no? That you did not come on time. No? That's a concrete behavior. No? So you don't say, ang feedback ko lang sa'yo, no, na I noticed kasi that you are lazy. So you just judge the person. No? Okay, so you don't say you are lazy. Your feedback is, I notice you are late. No? So I noticed that when you were dealing with the patient, your voice, no, you were raising your voice. No? So you don't say that you are impatient. No? You are rude. you are parang wala kang edukasyon. No? Okay, so yung behavior, not the person. Observation, not inference. Okay? And description, not judgment. Respectful. Look for the good. No? Non-judgmental. Give information, not advice. Mahirap to, no? Kasi syempre, advice agad tayo. Share ideas, explore alternatives, not providing answers. This one is simply, being respectful in the sense of respecting their freedom. If you want, these are their options. I think this is a better alternative to what you did. So you don't say, don't do that, do this. So ibang ano yun. No? Okay. When is feedback effective? When the other person understands the feedback. And very important. Did you give feedback? Yes. Naintindihan ba? Ewan. So, how do you know if they understood the feedback? If they can repeat it. If they can say it back to you. So when you give feedback, ask. Ask them to repeat it or to, ask them, did you understand? Was I clear? Kasi minsan nga, tayo, akala natin understandable tayo, pero hindi pala. No? So, ask the person if they understood the feedback. Second, do they accept the feedback? Again, very important. No? And number 3, the person is willing to act on the feedback. Okay. So, feedback is a teaching strategy. Okay, now we go to what you wanted to hear. Concrete examples. No? Concrete examples of teaching strategies, but in the context of the previous 3. We will examine, more or less the features, see if the features of the active classroom are there, no? And how to check these strategies, how to examine and convert them to be OBE fit. No? Okay, overview of health professions education. We are trying to prepare our students for the workplace, no? For practice. No? And in order to do that, we give them theory, a lot of theory. No? The venues for giving this, for teaching this, is usually the classroom, no? For cognitive domains, no? And the laboratories, no? For those requiring psychomotor, no, skills, no? Or technical skills. No? So the problem is the workplace is integrated, it's complex, it's comprehensive. things are happening at the same time. No? They will not introduce themselves. So, okay, this is a case of, wala. You just see a patient with signs and symptoms. Ikaw yung may knowledge of all the diseases, and you have to be able to identify the relevant signs and symptoms and follow through. No? So the workplace is integrated, complex, comprehensive. Usually the teaching that we do, the theory that we give them is deconstructed, simplified, focused. So we need a venue wherein we help them integrate all of this deconstructed, simplified, and focused theory. No? So from theory to practice, we have the clinics. So that's what happens in the clinics. We try to integrate. No? And that takes place through the experience and explanation cycle. No? So you help them integrate their learning. No? By integrate, we mean vertical integration and horizontal integration. And we do that by giving them experiences. We can examine the realism of the experience. It has to be actual, realistic experiences. And the variety. So kung iisang klase lang ng disease yung nakita nila, they're not prepared. So these are things that are difficult to plan. Kaya nga clinical teaching is difficult. Because how can you predict what will come? But next month will be the assessment. You have to have a system of recording, a system of observing, so that you can know what are the experiences this particular student is receiving. So that you can assess, are they varied enough? Are they realistic? In scope, in depth. So the realism and the variety of the experiences that they are receiving, we try to look into that. And explanation cycle. No? So we want to see, again, very important, feedback and reflection. No? Okay. So we will try to see how do we OBE fit, no, or what are OBE fit teaching learning strategies in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in the clinics. No? So I will not go in depth because each one of these strategies is a lecture in themselves, but for us to see, how they fit the things that we've been talking about before, no? Yung features of an active classroom, the principles of OBE, and what can I do to OBEify the examination and conversion points so that my strategies will become OBE fit. No? So how to OBEify your classroom teaching. Classroom, what is the usual teaching strategy in the classroom? Lectures, always. No? So this is what we don't want to see in our lectures. Okay? Thank you very much. I don't see it here. A few. Okay. So you've heard of the study that said that adult learners' attention span is 15 to 20 minutes. Huh? Yes, no. So you've heard of that. First 5 minutes, it peaks. That's why the first 5 minutes is important. 5 minutes is important. You have to be able to say your objectives within the first 5 minutes. You have to be able to get their attention and transmit the objectives of the lesson in the first 5 minutes. Hopefully, they will be motivated so that they will give you a bit of time. No? Okay, first 5 minutes, that's the peak. It starts to decline. 6 to 18 minutes, medyo nag-decline na. Yung isa nagbabasa na ng kanyang cellphone. Okay, yung iba sa nagde-daydream na. Beyond 20 minutes, wala na. No? So you can't read it from where you are, but here it says what the professor says. The airway radius exerts the major influence of airflow resistance, etc., etc. What the students hear, blah, 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 major, blah, 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 resistance. So they didn't understand anything anymore, beyond 20 minutes. So do we let go of our lectures? Kasi hindi siya active, hindi siya experiential, at hindi siya collaborative? No, but we have to OBEify it. What does that mean? Okay, check. We already said our examination and conversion points. First, constructive alignment. No? The lectures are appropriate for teaching cognitive domains of learning. No? So don't use your lecture to explain the steps in doing a tourniquet. Because that's not what the lecture is for. You might as well do a demonstration for that. So, check yung construct alignment here is check the appropriateness, no, for which you are using the lecture. No? Used predominantly in the preparatory phase of the clinical learning cycle. Okay, this is maybe the most important thing. Increase student performance during your classroom teaching. No? Involve the students, engage them in the material itself. To prevent the students from assuming a completely passive listening role. How do we incorporate opportunities for reflection and feedback? Include questioning. Include questioning to foster critical thinking and, okay, so here in OBE-fying your lectures, we will talk about two things, small group activities and the flipped classroom. So these are many. No? These are many teaching strategies that you can look into. No? Okay, small group activities. Okay, this one introduces the active. No? So you want the yung ACE. No? You small group activities, usually you make them do things. Do things as in apply the knowledge, make them solve problems, etc. So sagot na niya yung active. Collaborative, usually this is done in small groups. No? So in groups of 2 up to mga 7. No? So sagot na rin niya yung collaborative. Experiential also because nga, we make them do the things, no? Do something. No? Okay, so you reach higher levels of learning when we incorporate small group activities. Why? Because we engage the students. The students are engaged, therefore, they find the activity more relevant. No? Okay, you need to vary the activities. And this is also an effective way of resetting the clock. So yung sinabi nating 15 to 20 minutes, pag nag-insert ka ng small group activity, back to 0. No? So you have another 15 minutes to talk. Kasi nagising na sila. No? And they're usually, because you really make them use the learning, no? They discover things, no? when you give them activities. No? So they are motivated to attend further, no? The next part of the lecture, etc. No? So we will go through some. There are many. So we call it break a leg. No? Instead of breaking a leg. No? Break a leg. No? So you need to break a leg, no? With small group activities. There are many. We're not going to discuss all. I'm just going to give you examples. Examples of some of them. No? The important thing is not to incorporate all. The important thing is, as I said, number one always, what are your outcomes? What are your outcomes? Construct alignment. No? So these different learning activities have indications. They are good for something. So you have to use them for what they're good for. No? For example, brainstorming, very popular kasi madali siyang gawin. No? Okay, class, let's do a brainstorming activity. No? Okay. Brainstorming is good for generating ideas. It's not good for going in-depth. It's not for in-depth discussion. It's just generating ideas. No? So what are the things that we can do? No? Or what can you think of? These are the signs and symptoms of these patients. What are you thinking of? Differentials. Okay. No? So give them, no? Without stopping them, just write everything that everybody is saying on the board usually, and then after that you will have time to process. No? But the brainstorming, the essence of brainstorming is storm. No? So no holds barred, just get all the ideas. without judging them. Get all the ideas on the board. No? Pag nandun na sa board lahat, then we can discuss. No? By that time, pwede na kayong mag-critique kasi wala nang makakaalala who said what. No? Kasi usually pag naano ka, that was my idea, masakit. Diba? Pag kinontra. But since it was a brainstorming, it's all on the board now, nobody remembers who said what. Then we can critique each idea. No? So this is good for generating ideas. So provide a cue, and then the students will contribute their list. So for example, brainstorming is not good for, okay, class, this is the signs and symptoms of the patient. Let us brainstorm. What is the diagnosis? What is the no? Hindi pwedeng, kasi na yun, ang daming critical thinking, no? Marami kang i-rule out, madaming proseso before you can come up with a definitive diagnosis. No? So hindi siya appropriate for a brainstorming activity. No? Okay. Okay, so how many different conditions can you come up with where this could be a presenting symptom? No? Buzz groups. Buzz groups are also good for generating ideas. Students discuss within the group about a specific topic. Usually, the amount of time you give corresponds to the amount of students in the group. So if there are 5, give them 5 minutes. So 1 minute each. So again, mababaw lang to. Generating ideas lang siya. So it's not really used for consensus building. So for example, again, in groups of 3, think about what might be the implications when trying to establish a differential diagnosis. So all of these little activities are preparing you for the next phase in your lecture. So jigsaw or crossover, these are good for clarifying ideas and already building consensus. So jigsaw or crossover, parang jigsaw puzzle. So for example, you have a group of 4 people, we form one home group. There is an issue given to us, and we will try to, among the 4 of us, we will choose what part of this issue I am going to study. So you will divide the issue among the 4 of you. So I will become the expert in this part of the issue. So 1, 2, 3, 4. The 4 of you taking care of one part of the issue. And then you will move. So all the number 1s, everybody that will be involved will be the expert in issue or segment number 1 will meet. And then they will discuss segment number 1. They will try to go in depth to segment number 1. Then after 15, 20, 30 minutes, so try to go in depth in that topic. Go back to your home group and report to your home group. What did you learn in your expert group meeting? So the original home group will be richer from the discussions that that each one had with their expert group. As opposed kung kayong 4 lang ang nag-discuss. Diba? Okay, so that's one way. Actually, the plenary is optional kasi the fact that you went through it is already learning. You may or may not need a plenary. Quizzes. Quizzes and making them write questions, this is very interesting. Because you put them in the teacher's position. It's very hard to make questions. So pasa mo sa kanila. Pasa nyo sa kanila. They'll appreciate you more because they realize how hard it is to write questions. Aside from that, more than that, it's because it will contribute to their metacognition. When you give them an immediate quiz, when you ask them to write questions, they will reflect on what I know, what I don't know, bakit hindi ko alam. So you're actually contributing to their metacognition, thinking about my thinking. Bakit hindi ko alam yung sagot doon? What do I need to do to learn it? So it's a kind of formative assessment. So again, these little activities are actually teaching strategies. No? You are making them think. Aside from that, they will always hope na yung exam question na ginawa nila will come out in the exams. You can say it. No? If your questions are good, they may come out in the exam. No? So they will even acquire that teacher skill of making questions, making good questions. No? Minute papers. This means, for example, you finished 1 hour of lecture or the topic, give them 3 minutes, write down the most important things you learned in this 1 hour. Because that's an immediate reflection. They will immediately reflect and again, metacognize. No? Bakit ang dami niyang nasulat? Bakit ako dalawa lang? No? So, they will think. No? Okay? And later on, they will talk about it. They will talk about it with their classmates. Ba't ang dami mong sinulat? Ako dalawa lang ang naintindihan ko or nakuha ko. Ano yung mga nakuha mo? And then they will talk to each other. No? Okay, case scenarios. Again, clarify ideas, build consensus. Okay. So we will not go too much into the examples, no? Kasi more than I want the objectives. So clarifying ideas and building consensus. Critical thinking, because you make them analyze. No? Problem scenarios, again, similar. No? In-depth discussion, values clarification, depending on the problem. This particular problem is opportunity for values clarification kasi interesting siya. We have 3 patients waiting to come in for this procedure. Only 1 bed available. Give a brief case synopsis. Who should we admit first and why? This is a complex problem, no? So, but that's an opportunity now. It's a real life problem, no? So this is an opportunity to talk about things that maybe is not in the curriculum. Because this incorporates administrative issues, no? In a hospital, etc. No? So that's a very interesting problem. Fishbowl. Fishbowl, as the name, is like a fishbowl. No? A fishbowl is there inside and you watch it. No? So the fishbowl is a small group activity wherein one group is inside. You have an inner group who will perform a task, either perform a task or discuss an issue. And then you have an outer group whose task is to observe them. And then at the end, the observers, will comment on what they observed. Okay, so this is good for clarifying ideas, building consensus, and of course, teaching them how to give feedback. No? Role play. Role play is very good for exploring communication issues or attitudes. Okay? Communicate. In this case, it's a communication issue. No? Working in pairs, practice explaining a diagnosis of X to a child of 5 and their parents. No? During the role play, you'll be able to observe attitudinal issues. No? And during the debrief, you have to tackle them. No? So when you design these activities, you go in with a list of objectives. So you have to go in knowing that you will observe for these attitudes. So that when they do the role play, you are prepared to make your observations and to, no? So hindi siya blind. Hindi siya, okay, let's just do a role play. No? There is a purpose. There are specific attitudes that you want to observe in that role play. That's why you designed the case to be that way, no? Because it will throw light on that attitude. No? So the more complex the case that you will make them role play, the better. No? Okay. Debate. No? So debates, students take either side of a given issue. No? For example, in dentistry, you have the pro and anti replacement of amalgam fillings with composite fillings. No? So you have contenders on both sides. So okay, this is very high order thinking. Because you make them, you're supposed to know the content, they have to evaluate, they have to defend their point. No? So the secret to choosing or designing a debate activity is that the issue has to be debatable. Right? So you don't give an activity wherein one is obviously correct and the other one is obviously wrong. Kasi kawawa naman yung na-assign nyo sa wrong. No? Ang hirap mag-defend nun. No? Okay, so it has to be a debatable topic. Okay, so small group activities, it's worth the investment. No? People are more engaged, they go deeper, they retain more, they reach levels of creation and origination. Okay, flipped classroom. Flipped classrooms, ang finiflip mo dito is what happens in the classroom and what happens at home. The traditional classroom is that you transfer information in the classroom and then you give a homework wherein they will apply that knowledge into an activity. You will make them do a homework. So flipping the classroom means you give them the resources, so they do the transfer of information on their own, given the resources that you ask them to read, to watch, no, etc. No? And then they come to the classroom in order to do an activity. So it's an application activity that you make them do. So there's no transfer of information. It already took place at home. They come to class in order to do something, to apply the knowledge that they should have studied. No? And yeah. No? And then you come in, no, in order to debrief or to facilitate, no, the activity. There are 3 common ones. No? Case-based learning, problem-based learning, team-based learning. No? Are they active? Yes. Are they collaborative? Yes. Are they experiential? Definitely. No? So they fit all the attributes or features of an active classroom. No? If you go by the T's, ganun din. No? Thinking, task focus, teamwork, transcendent. All of them are. No? Okay. So this is the part that they're big, they're complex. No? So we will not really go very deeply into it, but to understand what they are. No? Case-based learning, students develop skills in analysis, critical thinking, reflective judgment. No? So you will give them complex, real-life scenarios. No? So I just like to compare case-based learning against problem-based learning, because these are the common two na people cannot distinguish. No? When is it case-based? When is it problem-based? No? It seems as if they're both solving, no, cases. No? So the difference is in the technique. Case-based is called guided inquiry, whereas problem-based is called open inquiry. So the implications there has to do with the amount of teacher control and amount of student control. So in case-based learning, the teacher is more in control. You are in control of the objectives of the activity. There's a specific objective. That's why you designed this case. They're supposed to reach a certain conclusion, no, etc. Problem-based learning is open inquiry. Everything is really up to the students. You just give them a very incomplete problem, no, and they analyze the problem. They design their own objectives. No? They design from beginning to end, they design. No? Yung case-based, hindi. No? More or less, ikaw, meron kang control. No? You have the objectives. You design the case, for one thing. You design the case. Okay, so designing the case for case-based learning is an incomplete case. Okay, so you give an incomplete case to the students to analyze and create an action plan. So you just give enough detail for the students to create their own differential diagnosis. Usually there is no absolute answer. Okay, so students should have various ways to come up with a conclusion using the course concepts previously discussed. So it's the process. No? As a facilitator, you're looking into their process. No? And yeah, no? Kung ito yung mga differentials that they come up with, your next follow-up question is, what do you need to do, no? In order to decide, no? Etc. So, ikaw magde-design ng trigger question, ikaw magde-design ng follow-up questions. No? If you want to go into step-by-step how to make cases for case-based learning, no? You can look at the resource that I wrote down there. No? Because the secret in case-based learning is the designing of the case. No? Kasi mahirap siyang, no? In fact, if you've made a case and it works, no? In the sense that your students report that they got in-depth, they learned a lot, no? The case was rich, it was complex, no? They got a lot out of it, they were able to go into many areas. Keep that case. No? Kasi it's hard to design a good case. So run it, keep running it, collect your cases. No? You can even submit that, no? For okay. Problem-based learning is a type of inductive instruction. No? So as we said, it's called open inquiry because the students, you just give them a problem, no? And even what they will ask will come from the students. No? They will identify the learning gaps, no? And then they will design. It follows basically the process of research, no? From the problem identification to reading, no, review of literature, no, coming up with a hypothesis, testing the hypothesis, etc. No? So this is the famous 7-jump format, no, of problem-based learning. So clarifying the terms and concepts, defining the problem. Number 3, analyze the problem, construct a hypothesis, formulate learning issues, and then you have the self-directed study, and synthesis and report. So these are things, these are things that don't happen in one sitting. They happen in a course, no, of several sessions. Okay. Okay. So you can, there are many things you can study about each one. What I wanted to share with you is this article, no, comparing problem-based learning with case-based learning. No? This was a study in the US, no? Association of American Medical Colleges. They studied 2 universities that implemented both problem-based learning and then case-based learning. No? They interviewed the faculty and they interviewed the students. No? And their results showed that 89% of the students, 84% of the teachers preferred CBL, case-based learning, over problem-based learning. Why is this? So the things that they commented on is that there is fewer unfocused tangents. Tangents, because yun na nga, since the teacher is more in control, there's a direction. There is a definite direction, there's a definite focus of the activity. Whereas problem-based learning, there was more opportunities for going off tangent. So the quality of learning, it was very hard to regulate, depending on the group. So some groups learned a lot, some groups very superficial, depending on what they identified. So less busy work, nobody wants to be busy. So one of the reasons they gave is that it's less busy, and there were more opportunities for clinical skills application in the case-based learning. Okay, most of the time, this observations was due to the amount of control that the students had and the teachers had over the activity. So this is just 2 universities. We're not going to use it to judge between CBL and PBL. But basically, PBL requires a lot of training on the part of the teacher. So maybe that's also one reason why it's difficult to run. Because the teachers have to be trained on the 7 steps, on facilitating skills. And also this study did not measure the amount of learning. So between the students of the two types of teaching strategies. Okay. Team-based learning. This is a 4-minute video I wanted to show you because it explains team-based learning very well. This is a relatively new strategy. It's very interesting, and okay, we'll watch it. How do I do this now? Hi. Nothing comes out for me to press. Asan yung ipapress?
Hi, you're about to watch a team-based learning video. My name is Preman and I am a team-based learning facilitator. In each session, there's a team-based learning facilitator and content experts who are the faculty who run the session. Team-based learning is a sequence of in-class activities designed to engage students in meaningful learning. The first activity in class is an individual readiness assurance process. This is an MCQ test where students are tested on their understanding of concepts which are reviewed before class. Students review concepts before class on video annotated PowerPoints, textbook material, or lectures. In this scene, you see students engage answering these MCQ questions. It is very much like a test and is conducted under test conditions. Students will not know whether they've got the right or wrong answer, but in a minute, they will do the same test as part of the team readiness assurance as a team. And at this point, they'll be given immediate feedback on whether they've got the right or wrong answer. You will see the class go from pin drop silence to an active discussion. Student teams have a discussion, commit to an answer, and electronically receive immediate feedback on whether they've got the answer right or wrong. This drives the discussion and makes sure that students justify their answers to each other before committing to an answer. Often in the team, someone is able to explain what the right answer is to his teammates. Answers which students still aren't able to get right may be raised at a class level and discussed with the content expert. As you can see, students are actively engaged throughout the whole process instead of passively sitting and receiving information. In the discussion, students are called upon to justify their answers and are able to raise questions to the entire class. The content expert is then able to correct any misconceptions which arose and clarify any tricky issues. The purpose of the IRA, TIRA, and discussion is to make sure that students understand key concepts, key basic concepts, which then they can apply in a realistic setting. This process also prepares them for the application exercise, which happens later on in the day. The next process in team-based learning is the application exercise. This is an application of some of the basic concepts to a clinical scenario. In this particular application exercise, the content expert is playing a patient and being interviewed by students. Based on his responses, students will need to answer the application questions. Application exercises show students the relevance of what they're learning and help them understand the application of these basic concepts to real-world scenarios. Next, students go back to their teams and once again come to consensus on questions which are posed to them. Each team makes a specific choice and then simultaneously reports their answers. They discuss their answers with each other, especially answers which may be different, and try to convince each other that each have chosen the best solution.
Yeah, would the son have told the father no? Like the wording this friend was here. The son had said no, stop sitting on the table. The son could have changed caregiver from son and daughter-in-law to daughter and maid.
Often students come up with brilliant justifications. The content expert can then finally come in and clarify any issues as well as highlight gaps in students' knowledge.
It doesn't make a difference to them. It doesn't make a real connection to them. But it's a true person. Okay, and that's
This active engagement sense allows students to engage in deep, meaningful discussions with content experts and each other. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. If you have any questions about team-based learning, contact us.
Okay. So, as you can see, it was very collaborative. They call it a motivational framework because the very fact that feedback is immediate and they are actually feeding off each other, the team itself. So, built in yung motivation. Because they want to get the right answer, they want to be the team that gets the correct answer, etc. And they are accountable to their teammates. So for all these reasons, they say that team-based learning is effective. Students are coming to class prepared. Okay. Okay. So the important parts of the TBL is the permanent groups. Meaning, for this activity, that is your group. The next module or the next activity, you'll stay with the same group. So for the duration of the course, you stay with the same group. Because building the team is part of the learning in team-based learning. There is frequent and immediate feedback. And then you have the application activities. Okay, and then the accountability. Okay. Okay. Now we go to OBEifying your laboratory teaching. We go very quickly because simple lang ito, no? Following the principles that we already talked about, examination and conversion points. Constructive alignment, demonstration is for student learnings of procedural knowledge. So that is appropriate for demonstrations. Procedural knowledge or declarative knowledge that is well structured and therefore can be taught in a step-by-step fashion. For example, diagnosis and treatment planning, no? Interviewing, patient interview. So, okay, examination. No? So you can teach this in a step-by-step fashion, therefore it can be demonstrated. Again, the most important part I think here will be to check on student performance. While conducting a demonstration, pay special attention to those phases that involve student performance. Okay. These are the 5 phases in conducting a demonstration according to Arendt's. Explanation, demonstration, student performance, supervision, and providing for extended practice and transfer. So take note, I highlighted the ones that involve student performance. They are steps number 3, 4, and 5. The return demonstration or the student performance, the supervision wherein you make them do it, and you're just going around observing how they are doing it, and then providing for extended practice and transfer, usually at home, or giving them more complex things to practice with. So if you take note of the picture, does it look like he is prepared for the students to do a return demo? Mukhang he is just going to demonstrate. Explain and demonstrate. So again, examine. Kaya nga, examination and conversion. Examine what you do when you're demonstrating. We all do, hopefully we do the explanation part, and we do the demonstration part. But how often do we make sure that there is the return demonstration and supervision and extended practice? So just that one, look into what you're doing, make sure that you reach student performance. Opportunity for reflection, again, teach them how to assess their own performance. Very important. Give them the rubric that you're going to use during the final exam so that they can, first of all, evaluate themselves against those rubric. Okay, before we continue, answer me this. True or false? Practice makes perfect. Sino ang true? True, show of hands, true. I bet when I say false, wala din kamay. False, show of hands. Mas madaming false. Maliit nga lang, pero why do you say false? Correct practice makes perfect. How will you know your practice is correct? Who will say to you na tama yung practice mo? Okay? If you notice the pictures I placed there, these are learning how to play the violin, judo, the surgeon, I don't know what the teacher is teaching there, but then what is the important thing? When you're trying to learn, especially a skill, can you practice alone? Can you practice just with your peers and let's hope we got it right? There's a mentor. I heard the word mentor. So practice does not necessarily make perfect. Practice makes permanent. Correct practice makes perfect, okay, pero incomplete yun. Kasi how do you know if your practice is correct? There is a, starts with an F. No? F there means false. But the answer also starts with an F. Practice with feedback. Practice with feedback makes perfect. So you will know that your practice is correct because somebody tells you, this is correct, no, this is wrong, do this way to improve. So practice with feedback makes perfect. Okay. So very quickly, because we already mentioned feedback earlier, right? Ano yung ating for feedback? When do you know the qualities of a good feedback? Star. Okay. Specific, timely, actionable, and respectful. So this one is just specific to demonstrations. As soon as possible, specific behavior. So nothing's new. This is also what we said earlier. Judge their own performance. This one is very good. Number 5, praise and feedback on correct performance. Usually as teachers, we say this. No? Minsan tinatawag pa natin yung mga iba. Class, come here. No? Look at what this person is doing. Mali yan. No? Okay, so parang, so what they will remember is what you showed them. So they will remember the wrong thing. No? So yun. So you have to show you have to show feedback on correct performance and show them how to do it correctly. No? Okay. Okay, OBEifying your clinical teaching. Clinical teaching, it has been said, has to take place on real patients with real problems. That's why clinical teaching, we take them to the rounds. No? We do the rounds with them. That's where the clinical teaching is really put into practice. No? Okay, so the rounds, the inpatient wards, etc. These are the opportunities for teaching, honing, communication, examination, diagnostic skills, as well as exercising clinical reasoning. So these are the things that we need to look at. Okay, this time it's OBE that tells us principles of experiential learning in the clinical setting. Again, if you will look at them, they follow the principles of OBE. They follow what we said about the examination and conversion. No? Anchoring cases, the instructional cases, involving the learners, modeling professional thinking, giving feedback. So na-impatcho na tayo sa feedback, and the learning environment. Okay. Clinical cases, real patients. The role of the teacher in preclinical teaching, usually the role of the teacher is in designing the case and facilitating the discussion. In clinical teaching, the role is monitoring the quantity and quality of the cases. So I don't know if we do this, but if you want, if you can, go. Do it, because that's where you can be of benefit. No? If you can monitor the quantity and the quality of the clinical cases that each student is getting, assessing the achievement of the learning goals, and supplement and remediate if necessary. If the cases are not coming, then give hypothetical cases, have a group, no, a workshop, or whatever, a discussion group on it. Have a video, if you can get a video to discuss what it is that you wanted them to learn and the cases are not coming. No? Right now, there's so much information in the web, so you can get a video of that of a case that's not coming, but you can get a video of it and then discuss it. So remediate. So remediating is also very OBE. Okay. So this is a list that I got in an article, no? What the instructor does versus what the students do. So not just the amount, double. No? The instructor did 16 points here. The students did only 8. And if you can read what the instructor did, nakakapagod talaga. No wonder clinical instructors are tired. No? Because they're doing everything from briefing the students to taking the history, chatting with the patient, reading the notes, discussing the management with the team, examining the patient, ordering the investigation, examining the x-rays, teaching the students again, asking questions, and offering feedback to the students. Whereas the students stood, listened, watched, fetched and carried things, talked among themselves, answered questions, examined a patient each, and looked bored. So yun. No? So again, actively involve the students. How can you involve them? You can give a clinical case in advance to encourage reading. Assign portions of the topic to each learner. No? So it seems as if you're passing the buck to the learner, but actually mas dagdag trabaho, because these are things that we don't do before. No? Assigning the topic ahead. No? Have each of them write a test question again. Students are allocated a patient to read their notes, chat with the patient. No? They will be the one to present during the ward rounds about the patient. Okay? And they can even conduct the first part of the consultation, etc. Okay. There are 2 models that you can try directed towards clinical teaching. No? One is by the 1-minute preceptor, but by Gordon and Meyer. No? So this one talks about the different skills that a clinical teacher should have, no? Or should do. No? set goals and expectations, get the learner's commitment, no, etc. We will go through that in an example. No? So you're given a case. Okay, this is the case. These are the presenting symptoms of my patient. No? And then, following the 1-minute preceptor, the first thing that the teacher does, get the commitment of the student. What do you think is causing his symptoms? I think he has pneumonia. Micro skill number 2, probe for supporting evidence. What made you say so? Okay, patients with pneumonia usually have fever and cough, etc. So they have to defend their diagnosis. Number 3, teach general rules. Tama yung sinabi mo, patients with pneumonia usually have those presenting symptoms, no, etc. No? You will need a chest x-ray to verify, no, or to confirm. No? Provide positive reinforcement. Okay, I don't know if we do this. No? So you did a good job in putting the case together, etc., etc. You were able to identify 3 possible diagnoses, and then correct mistakes, or add, no, to their ano, no? Okay, so you did not take note, no, the etc., etc., no? Okay, and what information you will need in order to determine our treatment approach. So these are the things, the step, no, that you can do. Okay, now the thing with the 1-minute preceptor is, again, it is teacher focused. No? SNAPS is another model, no, which is more student focused. No? So SNAPS stands for it's an acronym, no? Again, summarize, narrow, analyze, probe, plan, and select. No? So summarize the history, narrow the differential diagnosis, analyze. So it's the same. Basically, it's the same steps as the micro skills of Gordon and Meyer, except that they're formulated from the point of view of the learner. These are the things that the student should do. But the difference is number 4, which is very interesting. Probe the preceptor by asking questions about uncertainties, difficulties, or alternative approaches. So you see that you are actively asking the students, ask me questions. So it's not the teacher asking questions from the students. It's the students asking questions from the teacher. Modeling professional thinking and action. No? Following the social learning theory of Bandura, no, we say that students learn from watching us, not just from what they hear from us in the classroom. They learn a lot, no, from watching us, no, and hearing, no, what we say. So let them observe the behavior, and we will study two strategies designed, no, precisely to facilitate this modeling of professional thinking and action. The clinical reasoning theater and the students' clinical observation of preceptors. Clinical reasoning theater, this simply means voicing out your thoughts on the part of the instructor. Voice out your thoughts while you are in front of the patient, because that's a very powerful way of teaching the students how an expert thinks. Again, don't assume that they will get it. You have to verbalize it. So being reflective and articulate about one's thinking process. So novices think in a different way from experts. So if you articulate your thinking process, okay. Okay, the cartoon is. Okay, so what happens in a clinical reasoning theater? No? So there's 2 acts, no? Kaya nga theater. No? Act 1, the doctor interacts with the patient. The students watch. No? Okay, so what is the interaction? History taking, physical exam, diagnostic tests, treatment planning, prognosis, no? So everything. No? Act 2, the doctors and the students interact. So this is the time, this is timeout period. No? It's like a metacognitive intermission because this is the part where the instructor, the doctor, explains his reflections to the students. The students can ask questions. They can discuss suggestions from the audience. The teacher can also ask the audience for additional questions. Sometimes it happens that since doctors are experts already, the students are fresh from preclinical, you taught them the sequential questions, right, in examination and interviewing the patients. And then when the doctor comes, wala, 2 questions, 3 questions, tapos na. No? So the students are confused. No? Bakit ang bilis? No? So they will ask, this is the time to ask the questions. So it's not just routinely, hindi. No? If you don't process this with them, they will just say, hindi importante yon yung natutunan natin. Hindi yan importante kasi I've observed this professor, he never asks those questions. So the student doesn't know that the reason you don't ask those questions is because you already know the answers. Because of your observational skills, because of your years of experience. But since all that the student saw is that you didn't ask those questions, they will come out thinking, you don't ask those questions anymore. So that's why the importance of verbalizing, no, what you're thinking and allowing the students to ask questions. No? So yun. So you will be surprised. No? Kaya yung mga shortcuts that natututunan nila, sometimes it's the fault of the instructors. No? And then the students' clinical observation of preceptors. Again, this is intentional modeling. In other words, intentional. Sinasadya mo. You're really asking them to look at you, no? To watch you. So third-year medical students are oriented to observe interactions more than the content of the interaction. Okay. So students observe, students focus and documents observations. So para talagang the students yung sila yung may rubric, sila ang may mag-o-observe. No? And they will using of standard form. No? That's where the learning takes place because you will be the one to supply the standard form. No? What is it that you want them to observe in your behavior? No? And they will observe it. They will see, was it present, was it not? What did they observe? And then you will discuss with them. No? So there's a lot of learning there. No? Okay. Faculty feedback. It's feasible even in a busy clinical setting because nothing changes in the actual interaction time. It's just that you have an audience. There is time needed afterwards because you need to dedicate time to talk with the students after. But it increases faculty attentiveness to intentional modeling. It provides opportunities to discuss behaviors with students. And it provides opportunities, again, for students to practice feedbacking skills. Okay, debrief. This is again an often neglected part. This is an example of where we facilitate reflections on experience. The debrief. Now the debrief is needs to be scheduled. No? So this is where we need to plan. No? We need to plan for reflection, plan the debriefing sessions. And what takes place in the debrief? You have to make sure that, again, is it the teacher debriefing? Or is it an opportunity for you to ask the students what happened? What did you think about what happened? No? What, no? Then you give them questions to think about, no? Etc. No? Or you can actually reply, no, to their queries. No? Okay, providing direction and feedback. We think that feedback is the heart of medical education. This requires discipline on the part of the instructors, no, to actually be present in order to observe, no, and to put their observations in writing. Okay. So direct observation, assessment records, facilitating the feedback. So kung wala yung direct observation, wala yung assessment records, you will not be able to give feedback. Okay. So we already said that. No? The presence of the instructor is the most important thing throughout the clinical experience, no? Not just in the final exam. Okay, this one is just a preview. Next month will be about assessment. There's so many methods of recording, no, your observations. So you can go through that. The toolbox, is there. The resource is there, no, and choose what is applicable in your situation. But the important thing is there has to be a record, a written record of your observations. No? So fill out evaluations on time. Okay. You have brief feedback, formal feedback, major feedback. You have like, so the brief feedback is also called the micro feedback. The two, formal feedback and major feedback, are called macro feedbacks. So it's all feedback. No. Okay. Again, principles of constructive feedback in the clinical environment. We've gone through it before again. Nothing different except number 7. Involve team members if necessary. There is such a thing as the 360. Means you ask feedback from everybody involved in the clinical experience. From the patient to the bantay, to the nurse on duty, to you get feedback from everybody regarding how the doctor performed. So, feedback don'ts. Very nice. Take a picture because this is very important. I practiced this presentation to 2 students. And I wanted to cut out this slide. Kasi nga, it's taking too long, I'm gonna cut out slides. So I wanted to cut out this slide, and she said, no, they don't want this slide to be cut out. No? She said, it's very important, you need to tell this to them. So don't give feedback when angry, not in public, or emotionally charged settings. Don't be completely negative, don't be completely positive. Again, don't criticize the personality. And this was very interesting. Don't put negative comments on paper until discussed with the person. This is very discreet. Okay, we're on the last point, creating a collaborative learning environment. So in the moment, these are instructional things that you can do. We already talked about this earlier also. Questions are asked, ideas are challenged, information is freely shared. Institutionally, what can you do to create that collaborative environment? Remediation programs, mentoring programs. Okay, so formative feedback, reflection, remediation. So they had this thing in School of Medicine in New York. So starting 2004, they have a comprehensive clinical skills examination at the end of clerkship. They give an exam. The goal is to give the students formative feedback as they enter the last year of medical school. So they give a final exam at the end of clerkship. All who fail the exam will have to enter a remediation program before they enter the last year of med school. The target is that all students will be on course to graduate at the same time. So you don't remediate after failure. You remediate to prevent failure. So the final exam is done after clerkship. They have an 8-station OSCE across the clinical disciplines. They tested for 4 domains: communication skills, history gathering, physical examination skills, and clinical reasoning. So only those 4, 8 stations. So those who fail the exam, they have to enter the remediation program. No? There is a remediation team, and it's very individual. You have to collaborate in the design of your remediation treatment plan. Because iba-iba kayo ng reasons why you are left behind. So, I mean, why you didn't pass. So you need to talk with the remediation team. Where are you weak? What do you need? Etc. They design a remediation program and you do it. The aim is you graduate on time with your classmates. 10-year evaluation so this was 2004. They did a 10-year evaluation in 2014. There's a high success rate. There is positive feedback from the students. And according to the faculty, most students are remediated within 3 months. So, success. They graduate on time. Okay. Mentoring is the last thing. No? So this is another thing that you can do to have that collaborative learning environment. This is personal, individualized guidance to initiate learners in the road to reflective practice. So again, facilitating reflection. The aim is career development through personal development. Identifying their learning needs, setting goals, reflecting and reviewing their performance, monitoring self-development. Okay. So these are just some reasons students give why they want mentoring. So 2 main purposes, career development and psychosocial support. And this is only possible, again, if you have that safe learning environment. And in a way, you can say mentoring provides for that safe learning environment. Okay. So in summary, patapos na tayo. We are done. Congratulations. Take home, there is no such thing as an OBE teaching strategy. So your teaching strategies can be made OBE fit. If you take care of the 4 principles of OBE, what are they? CHED. Okay, that's all I want to hear. CHED. Okay. 4 features of an active classroom. In this star, the 4 T's. Thinking, task, teamwork, and transcendent. Or ACE. Active, collaborative, experiential. And finally, 4 points for examination and conversion. CSR. What's C? Construct alignment. Student performance. Reflection and feedback. Oh, kaling. Okay. And then we looked at the classroom, we looked at small group learnings, and some flipped classroom activities. We looked at the laboratories, return demonstration, and feedback. And we looked at clinical teaching. 1-minute preceptor and the SNAPS model. And you have the clinical reasoning theater or the SCOOP. Okay? And then institutionally, what can you do? Remediation programs and mentoring programs. So these are just adjunctive strategies. They're bigger than your classroom, but they supplement what you are trying to do in your classroom. Okay? So thank you very much.